My name is Evelyn. I am 27 years old, and I woke up on graduation morning with this electric feeling in my chest. 4 brutal, exhausting years of juggling 2 part-time jobs, student loans, and a business degree, all without a single dollar from my parents. I had saved 2 seats for them in the family section, one for mom, one for dad. When they called my name and I walked across that stage, I looked out at the crowd and both of those seats were still empty. I smiled anyway and finished the ceremony. It was only after, when I pulled out my phone, that I understood exactly why they never showed up. 4 years of 2 part-time jobs, student loans, and a degree in business administration entirely on my own. That morning, I ironed my own gown, pinned my own cap in a tiny bathroom mirror, and told my reflection I had made it. I had texted my parents the week before with the time and location. My mom replied with a plain, "Okay, honey." My dad sent a thumbs up. No excitement, no pride, just that. I told myself they simply weren't expressive people, and that showing up was what mattered. They never showed up. I sat in that auditorium surrounded by hundreds of families, cheering, waving signs, cameras flashing everywhere, and when they finally called my name, Evelyn Marie Carter, I walked across that stage and looked straight at 2 empty seats. I refused to let that moment collapse under their absence, so I shook the dean's hand, took my diploma, and held myself together until I got back to my seat. It was afterward that everything cracked. I pulled out my phone to call them, half hoping there had been some emergency. Instead, I saw his Instagram notification. My mother had posted photos from a restaurant 40 minutes earlier while I was walking across that stage, celebrating my brother Daniel's promotion at work. The caption said how proud she was of her son. My hands were shaking when I called her. She picked up laughing at something, background noise of clinking glasses and music behind her. "Oh, Evelyn, hi honey," she said like it was any ordinary evening. I asked where they were, already knowing what she said next. I will never forget. She told me almost casually that they already had one success in the family, so they hadn't really expected me to finish. She even laughed a little, saying it like my feelings were an inconvenience interrupting her dinner. I hung up. I sat in my car in that parking lot for a long time, still in my gown, diploma resting in my lap, and I made a decision in that silence. I was done trying to prove my worth to people who had already decided who I was. I didn't cry. Something in me shifted that afternoon, quiet and permanent, like a door closing softly and locking for good. I drove home alone, made dinner alone, and started planning, because 6 months later, I would send them a single photograph, and everything would change. Those 6 months were the quietest, most focused stretch of my life. They weren't easy. Some nights I sat at my kitchen table at 2 in the morning staring at rejection emails, wondering if maybe they'd been right about me. That thought crept in slowly, sometimes poisonous and quiet, but every time it surfaced I remembered that parking lot, remembered the decision I made sitting there with my diploma, and I'd close the laptop, sleep, and start again the next day. I had actually graduated with honors, but I never told them that. I never corrected my mother that night on the phone. I let them keep their version of me, the one who probably wouldn't finish, the quiet background child who didn't measure up to Daniel's promotions and my parents' proud dinners out. I let them keep that story because I was busy writing a completely different one. 3 weeks later, something happened that would eventually flip everything upside down. I landed an entry-level analyst job at a mid-sized financial consulting firm downtown. It wasn't glamorous: coffee runs, spreadsheets, staying 2 hours late, learning things nobody asked me to learn, but I was relentless about it. I studied the senior consultants, asked questions that made some of them uncomfortable, volunteered for projects nobody else wanted. Slowly, then suddenly, people started noticing. My manager noticed. Her manager noticed. By month 4, I was sitting in client meetings. By month 5, I had independently built a cost restructuring proposal that saved one client over $200,000 a year. The partners called me into a conference room on a Friday afternoon in month 6. I assumed I'd done something wrong. Instead, they slid a folder across the table, an offer for the junior partner track, something that usually takes people 3 to 5 years to reach. I was being offered it at 6 months. I signed it that same afternoon. That weekend, I got dressed up, not for anyone else, for myself. I drove downtown to the glass office building where I now worked, where my name was already listed in the internal directory under a title I had earned completely alone. I stood outside those glass doors and asked a stranger to take one photo of me. No caption, no explanation. I sent it into the family group chat that had gone silent for 6 months, then set my phone face down on the passenger seat. 40 minutes later, I picked it up to 47 missed calls from my mother. 47 in under an hour. My father had called 11 times. Daniel, who'd barely spoken to me in years, sent 3 texts begging me to call back. When I finally called my mother, she wasn't laughing this time. She was crying. She had Googled the building, she had looked up the firm, she understood exactly what that photo meant, that the daughter she didn't think would finish had not only finished, but had already outpaced everyone else in the room. She kept apologizing, kept saying she didn't know. I listened quietly, the same way I'd listened to her laugh on graduation day. When she finished, I said something I had rehearsed in my head for 6 months. I told her I forgave her, because carrying that anger was too heavy for the life I was building, but forgiveness didn't mean going back to how things were. Trust isn't a switch you flip. Respect has to be constant, not something that turns on only once someone becomes impressive enough to brag about. She went quiet after that. I think about that parking lot sometimes, that girl in the graduation gown sitting alone with her diploma. I don't feel sorry for her anymore. I feel grateful, because the moment my family chose not to show up for me was the moment I finally had to show up completely for myself, and that turned out to be the most powerful thing that ever happened to me. You don't need a cheering section to build something real. Thanks for watching.